So you want to go ahead and start a new folder, just going to be After Effects projects. I would save a copy of your logo into that. You can save it as an Adobe Illustrator, you can save it as separate parts, but we'll show you what the benefit of that is in a minute. So you're going to load Adobe After Effects, which you can just search if you want. And one of the other things that we may be able to offer you this year is everyone has to take the Premiere Pro certification. That is required as part of the animation and interactive media cluster to be certified in that. That's a state requirement. But normally after people pass that, we've been giving the Maya test. Now, because of a deal with Adobe, we can look at other certifications as well. So there is a Photoshop certification, there's an Illustrator certification, there's an After Effects certification, and then there's one that's animate in different programs, like it talks about the whole animation workflow. So what we'll do is kind of show you a little bit of everything, figure out what the resources are for that test, and then you can go through and do that. So you want to start with a new project, and you're going to get a menu that's quite empty. I know that's probably hard to see. I guess we should hit some lights over there. All right, and I still need screens off, and I need headphones off because I don't want to scream at you through headphones. Thank you. Screens off, please. Thank you. All right, so you can either do composition from footage, and this is going to make it so that your composition is the exact same size as whatever you bring in. This is almost always a useless function in After Effects unless you know that you're using a video you've already made. Almost always you want to go to New Composition. So you'll click on this and you can go to HD TV 1080 and 29.97. Remember, HD just means we're using HD resolution, which is 1920 by 1080. It tells you 1080 right there, just so you're not using one of the smaller HD ones, or 4K, although hopefully next year we'll be able to do that. And what's 29.97? You're all looking at me like, what? What is 29.97? Sometimes we round up to 30. Frame rate. You are right, it is frame rate. If we are in North America and doing video editing, we are editing at the frame rate 29.97, or so that everything we make is 30 frames a second. That's why hand-drawn animation can be difficult, right? 30 pictures for every second. You guys are going to experience that when we do stop motion when you come back in January. So 29.97, it's that weird little number because you lose 0.03 of the frame for sound. You guys probably don't care about that. When you round up, it'll go to 30. It's what kept me employed at a film lab because I needed to do a lot of conversion work. You're fine. So we go ahead and hit OK, and what we'll get is this black background. Now, although it will default to this black background, if I go ahead and change it to another color, it will not export with that. So if you want a different background other than black, you could do a mask and set a fill and a stroke layer. So let's say I wanted gray instead. I could draw a mask. This is also something you can use to cut out different areas. So I could do a mask and see where it says contents normal. I could pick another linked area and actually turn it so that this will only show through in that object. That'll make a little more sense in a minute. So to get something in the program, I go to, where am I? Can't see. Yes, you can. Okay, well then, where do we go to import anything? Import, always. Anytime you want to bring something new in an object in Adobe, it's just import. And then we will go to either files or multiple files if you want to bring multiple files in. You can also import Premiere Pro projects. So those read pretty nicely. Aha. All right, so if I went in here and I did After Effects project, I have my logo. And notice I can open it up as a sequence, an Illustrator PDF ESP sequence, which means I could bring in an image sequence the same way I brought in everything else. I can bring it in as a composition or footage. Footage is normally going to allow us to animate it normally. Composition will show you what that means first, and then it would bring it in just as its own object so I can animate it separately and then put it on here. Does that seem super useful for this? Or a little bit of overkill? It's pretty much overkill for this project. Unless you're doing a lot of layers, a lot of stuff, you don't have to. So we can bring it in as footage, although there is going to be one thing that will probably annoy you. Is it comes in one smaller, and it comes in all as one linked object. Is that useful to me if I want to animate different parts?
Oh, yeah.
If it comes in all as one object?
Oh, no.
No. So what are you probably going to start with today then? Yep, separating them and making your project a little bigger. So if I want to animate the text separately, I can do that. If I want to animate this separately, I can do that. So part of your job today might be saving the different parts that you want to animate separately on different projects. So it might be like cat logo, cat logo text. For some of you that have multiple things, it might be like your logo eyes, your logo. Some of you had like an egg, like you could do the egg and the viper separately if you want to animate them separately. So think about that. Now, there are some very easy ways we can animate in this, although they're not 100% intuitive. So I've got this point right here, right? What's that? We've used it in every project so far. Starts with an A. Anchor point. Yep. So this is going to be what my objects rotate around, what they move around. So if I wanted to scale it, it's going to scale around that anchor point. If I wanted it to pop out of the bottom, and this is probably the least intuitive part of this project, is you're going to have to hit the carrots. You'll see a lot of options here. You physically have to move the frame until it's lined up with the anchor point. And it would make a lot more sense if we could just drag the anchor point, but that's not what After Effects likes doing. So we move the anchor point to where we want it. And then we readjust our layer. This is pretty blurry, so I'd re-export it anyway. So we've got some easy animations we can do. Now, if you don't have this hit, this is called a stopwatch. It'll just move it. If I decide I want the position moved and I drag it, it's not going to animate because I don't have the stopwatch on. But if I wanted to animate this, I would hit the stopwatch. And I'm going to start first with a scale. And at this first frame, do you notice as soon as I hit the stopwatch, it made a keyframe right here, that little triangle? That's going to be what I'm looking at. It's linked right now, so when I move it, it'll scale together. If I don't want that, let's say I wanted him to look like he was popping up, I could unlink it so that I can just move the Y. If I want it linked, I hit the link button. So maybe I start this by getting it kind of microscopic, kind of as small as I can get. So, and I could even type 0 here. I can manually type numbers in. So that'll be my scale. I'm also going to turn on my position, and I'm going to drag my position off to the side. There we go. So I can start with it being off to the side, and maybe at 1 second I have it come in. And what do you see happening here? What is that little line? Do you know? It's a path. It's an animation path. And I can grab them and move them after I've made them. I can also go to the middle and add a curve. If usually I go to the white arrow, but we'll look at that. So if at this point I want it to scale, I do not hit the stopwatch. If I want to set a keyframe here but not move a number, I don't hit the stopwatch. That turns off my animation and erases absolutely everything I've done. So instead, what I'll do is, do you see this little button right here? The key button, it's a little triangle. I said I know it's small, and I've copied this whole thing, so we'll upload it to YouTube. I can hit that button. It will set a keyframe without moving a number. And then if I wanted this to pop up to full size, I can go ahead and adjust it. And if I wanted to keep this constrained, I could manually type it in 219.8. Now, if at this point, let's say I want it to rotate or something, I could hit the rotation option. For fading in and out, I could hit opacity. So let's say I wanted this to be completely faded out at the beginning. I could do that and then have it fade in as it rises. If I wanted this to fade in completely, I would go ahead and once again set my opacity down. Now, rotation's a little different because I can manually animate my rotation. I also have a times X button, so I can say how many times I want it to rotate. So let's say I want it to rotate 15 times, and I want it to go plus, I don't know how many degrees. We could do 360. And once again, I can always just type that in. Oh, you know what I did though? Which is what I told you not to do. Set the animation button first, and then if I want it to spin for 2 seconds, I can go times 22. Why not? Let's just see what happens. 360. And then when we play this, and I can play by hitting spacebar. I know, that was great animation, right? Great animation. Winner is me. It's beautiful. Okay, it has all the same ones here, so if you want to do blend options, you can. But the one thing this has that we haven't gotten into is effects and presets. And let's see if it freezes. After Effects is the probably most intensive Adobe program you can use. It's just been optimized for 360 video editing too. Everything kind of doubled in size. So what do I want to do? Frequently, often? Save. Yes. So I can call this cat logo demo. There it is. Okay, cool. Preferences general. So it's like all the rest of them. And then we want to go to autosave. Sweet. Autosaves every 20 minutes. You guys could bump that down to 7. So once again, that is edit. Thank you. I can't give extra credit anymore, but I can give you, you know, our devotion. Yeah. Yes. Maximum project versions. We could go ahead and you could have how many versions you want it to save. And I'll just go in a number and then it'll overwrite it. If you wanted a lot of them, you could say next to project, or you could set a custom location for the autosaves just in case you just want to keep them as a backup. That said, because we've been having some power blips and all that, try to save manually as well. So here's our last area. This is where we can look at things like text effects, we can do number codes, we can look at generate. These are a lot of the ones our students tend to like. Oh, I don't want light rays because I want it to pass by. I can animate that, but there is a better effect for that. Light sweep is probably what I want, to be honest. Light sweep, you gonna do it? Okay, so we've got a little bit of light here, so I'm gonna have to animate its position. But you can go through and kind of sweep intensity, light color, light reception, light thickness. So I can go ahead and set this as set this to animate as I go. I know. And so one of the things I find helpful is it's kind of hard sometimes to go through this entire list and say, oh, hey, what's cool? Let me just start throwing stuff on here. That's not what I want. Lens flare. All right, we'll do that in celebration of the new Star Wars coming out, right? And then we could go ahead and adjust this. Please, by the way, lens flare is a little, what do we want to call it? Maybe taboo at this point? Yeah, so let's not go nuts with lens flare unless it really adds to it.